Another
Jeez.
Sunday in the books.
I mean, not just another. I mean, that was crazy. We couldn't even keep up.
Finally, the scoring we've been waiting for.
Wow. That was and you know why? It's because the Titans finally started scoring. Finally.
It was National Tight Ends Day. They didn't have a choice. The script was
Which,
in. You
yeah,
gotta feed the
feels a
tight
little
ends.
sketch. It feels a little sketch that, oh, Titans don't do anything all year long. And all of a sudden, we've got Kyle Pitts popping off. We have Travis Kelce returning to form. Even Mark Andrews caught another touchdown. I mean, I could go. The list goes on and on with the tight ends. I think they should
Fast to
start
list the tight ends that didn't score.
exactly. I think they should do this like every week now. They're like, what's next week? Like National third down backs day. You know, like something where that field you can like kind of load up on and start because you know it's going to be a crazy week.
At the very least, we need a National Wide Receiver Day, National Running Back
Right.
Day. I mean, let us know which days to put in the parlays for. I mean, you could
It's
have made some
it's
good
crazy.
money going on the overs for the tight ends this weekend. And
I
I mean,
mean,
people joke about the NFL scripts, but it's one of those things where, I mean, it
how do you
really
explain
is
that?
there a memo sent from the league like reminding teams that it's NFL tight end day? Like we're gonna be pumping this the whole time on NFL Network, everywhere else. But
It was
I mean,
wild.
I think they, feel like their tight end is gonna feel left out if they don't get some attention. But it just
True.
kind of shows you when these coordinators want
Right.
to, they can scheme things up for all sorts of players. Laporta reappears when
Yeah.
Amon didn't do anything. So it's just one of those things where if they want to feature a guy, they can. You see that a lot of times when guys go out with injuries, all of a sudden a tight
Yeah.
end or a backup steps up. But they've got these plays that they designed for them, but they just never run. And now they're like, well, it's this is the one day a year we get to run your plays. Here they go. I
I
mean,
I feel like we saw more tight end screens than running back screens like all of today. It was so bizarre. I mean, the fact that we were talking about Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers wasn't even in the top 10 of tight ends, and he's been the most consistent tight end arguably all season long. And so,
he had a
to your
pretty
point,
average game for him, but instead of
yeah,
him
it
being
was
tight end 7, he's tight end
exactly
27. It's like
exactly. So like you finally had Dalton Kincaid score. You had Trey McBride play well. George Kittle looked really, like George Kittle always leads tight end day. So I'm sure George Kittle's going to have a great game. You had Kyle Pitts, Kate Otten, like these guys design plays wide open. It was crazy. I just have I need to talk to Roger Goodell. Like there's something in the air there. And the whole time it's like, what is it, like maybe like 17, 16 touchdowns for tight ends, at least over 15, I'm pretty sure. So I mean,
all-time
hopefully,
record for most receptions in a week for tight ends.
does it
NFL record.
so do you think after this week we'll see tight ends be put back in, or we're going to see it kind of revert back to what we've been seeing? Do you think this is like kind of the jar opening up for tight ends? Because
I I
if
think
it
some of
doesn't,
what
then I
happened.
really have some, like, I'm going to make a YouTube conspiracy theory video if
I
that's
mean,
the case.
you make it either way, it'll get hits, that's for sure. But these days, I think a big part of what happens is as the weather turns, these tight ends
Sure.
age better through the season. Basically, their position makes it so they have to be built durably for the whole season. They've got to be
Right.
able to block DNs. They've got to be able to take tackles from linebackers. They've got to be able to run with corners. So these guys are they just don't get injured in the same way. It takes a
Right.
really weird freak accident. Like when they get injured, it's like a torn pec. It's, like
It's
rarely
like a
do you see a
lineman.
torn
Yeah.
ACL, sometimes an ankle gets rolled weird, but they're not just spraining ankles. You don't see them with like busted ribs,
Yeah.
like just a lot of the things that take receivers out. You don't see those same injuries for them. It's more like a lineman type injury that'll knock them out. And so I think, they stay on the field. They're not injury prone. And then you're seeing all these receivers that are getting hurt going down. So all of a sudden they're moving up the pecking order.
Yeah.
A guy like Kate Otten, like that's going to
Yeah.
continue. He's now their top receiving option. Like they don't
It's great.
they tried with these other guys. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen. So he's going to be looking at 10 targets a game. I mean, his numbers are going to be there for the
Yeah.
rest of the year. Some of these other guys, it's kind of questionable. It's like,
Sure.
How consistent is Mark Andrews going to be with him and Likely are just sharing the touches? Like, I think
Right.
he's
And
kind
they're
of
running team.
shown, like, he's not going to be a total bust, but he's not going to be what he once was. Travis Kelce, I don't think that's sustainable. I think that was a tight end day push, and you're going to see maybe a
And you're
few
playing
more of these flash games. But
right.
I mean, his stats for the year going into it were like what you would normally see for 2 games. He's
Right.
got like 20 catches for 200 yards, and we're halfway through the season now. So it's just some of these guys I think are going to get going. Some of them, it's
To your
hit
point, the
wonder.
defenses are getting hurt as well. Less pressure on the quarterbacks means more time for the quarterbacks to get it out to the tight ends. Linebackers are going down, safeties are going down. You're getting guys who have no experience playing, against the top tight ends. There should be mismatches as you go ahead. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what happens next week. Roger Goodell might have to be like, hey, let's just make it so it's not as sketchy. Let's give the tight end some more love next week. So, but to that point, tight ends finally score. Tight ends finally show up. That means everyone's showing up on the stat sheet across the board. It wasn't just a tight end fest. It was an offensive juggernaut of a day for the NFL. And even as we were kind of checking our scores during the breaks and everything, the median score for these leagues, I think, are some of the highest I've ever seen since playing fantasy and doing the 2 record leagues.
Yeah, I mean, just huge scores. Is about 20 points higher than it's 15 to 20 points higher than it's been most weeks.
Jeez.
Which across the board, that's a pretty substantial amount. I mean, there are a lot of games that look like, oh, this is a shootout. Teams that scored as many points as you'd ever need to score to win, and they're coming out with a loss or 500 if they're lucky enough to have median scoring. And some, I mean, it'd be brutal to just get boat raced and by the median scoring, either tonight or tomorrow night. You never know if things keep going the way they have been going. Some of these scores that you thought you're safe at 160, 170, that might not even hit the median now. So, I mean, just really across the board, huge scores. And that means there weren't that many duds and there's tons of studs. So it was kind of fun going through all the studs this week. I mean, you could have your pick. We could have just done that. Just skip the bums.
Yeah. This was like literally, I know I joked about a dartboard with the Tampa Bay Bucks before the game, the wide receiver core, but this is truly like throw a dart at some of these starting players, and they probably had a great game. James Cook absolutely cooked the Seahawks. The Seahawks look terrible. They have a lot of injuries, I understand, but I don't think they're this bad. James Cook, 111 yards, touches. It felt like he was running all over them without being stopped. We talked about before the show. James Cook coming off an injury, had a good rest week last week, didn't have to do too much, and this week letting it explode. And we're really seeing the Bills' offense just firing at all cylinders. And James Cook, while they got Amari Cooper, they bolstered their wide receiver core. That's the Bills' offense. Is James Cook. Either James Cook is running it or Josh Allen's running it, and both of those guys are going to be hard to tackle.
Yeah, and Josh Allen running less is a full-on
for them.
Bills. It's not as good for fantasy, but I mean, it makes that team just so much deadlier when he's using his legs as a last resort instead of a first resort. I mean, the growth from him as a rookie till now is the most growth I've ever seen from a quarterback. Like seeing him play. Seeing him play as a rookie gives all the Anthony Richardson owners some hope, because that's kind of what there were a lot of Josh Allen games where he was throwing for 60, 70 yards in a game, and the Bills just took it on the chin for like 2 whole years. Everyone else is just freaking out about quarterbacks. Well, they just took it and said, we're just going to keep playing him. We're going to keep developing him. It's going to work out. And most people looking at it like, okay, do whatever, because the Bills have been horrible forever.
Right.
Now we're here where they've got the best quarterback in the league, unstoppable force when he wants to run, but he doesn't even have to run when he's finally got the weapons around him. Keon Coleman had another great game. He looks way better with Amari Cooper there. Really opens things up for him. Kind of thought that could happen and just really has taken a next step forward. So, I mean, another great game for James Cook, and this may continue. You know, we thought maybe Ray Davis would sprinkle in, steal some of that goal line work, and he certainly could. But for right now, James Cook is solid low end RB1,
He might
high end RB2.
he might be the type of running back that wins you a league at the end of the year. It's going to be cold in Buffalo. They're going to be running the ball even more. This guy, if he can stay healthy as a 4th, 5th round pick that you probably got him in, this is a kind of a league winner that you want, especially if he's playing like that. So James Cook, man, scary. Good to have, scary to play against right now.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts, scary for his opponents once more. The tush push is back.
Dude, that tush push was everywhere.
Has come back. It's probably the worst play in football to watch. It's like, when did I turn on Australian rugby?
I know.
It's really what it looks like, but gets him the 3 rushing touchdowns.
Right.
You know, throws 1 too. It was a nice throw and didn't really have to do a whole lot. It was a lot of Saquon, not a ton of throws, but when Jalen Hurts runs for 3 touchdowns, he's going to have a great game.
Yeah, and I think this is what owners have been drafted him for. They wanted him to score more touchdowns. He was hurt clearly all last year, or at least most of last year. So this is a big sign for things to come, hopefully. And this offense looks a little bit stronger, obviously, with the wide receivers coming back. If you're a Saquon Barkley owner, not your favorite type of game to watch, and you're hoping this is not all the touchdowns go to him, because you're probably punching the air if you're a Saquon Barkley owner. But really good sign for Jalen Hurts, especially beating a tough defense. The Bengals are not a weak defense by any means, and they were able to walk all over them. Even without the tush push, they were able to drive so easily. So Jalen Hurts, the Eagles, they're turning a page right now, and that offense is becoming what people were hoping for at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can carry that momentum and how much they keep using that play. I mean, I think running with Saquon's a better play to use and keep using. Like, you know, save those tush pushes for when you really need them. Like, I think they overuse it, and we saw last year how overusing it led to some kind of disasters down the stretch because they didn't know how to bully people with, you know, a 4-minute offense, the power run game, and they've tried to put some different plays off of the tush push, but I think they need, you know, a pass. They need like a.
If you were the defensive coordinator, what would you tell your defense to do in order to stop the tush push? Because the Bengals did it once pretty well, where everyone dove over the offensive lineman and tried to like stop him that way, but you have no leverage when you're in the air. So I don't know how you stop that play.
I think you kind of have to high-low it, which is not ideal, but I mean, you have to have probably 2 or 3 D tackles, D linemen just take out the center and the guards low, right at the snap, like just barrel under them and just blow up that spot, and then have your linebackers come through over the top. Like maybe it's a safety that's jumping across, or
they need Troy Polamalu. Troy Polamalu would have been the kryptonite to this
right. You wouldn't have got away with that. He'd like land on you right as you snapped it. Or really, it's like that the play from NFL Blitz where the edges, you just get like both the nickels and corners just blitz off the edge like immediately. Because I really think that is probably the most effective way, is to get somebody around the edge and pull him backwards. Yeah. But you don't really see that where, you know, the corners or some of the faster players, because there's nobody's lined up wide really on it, right? I'm pretty sure they're all in. So it's like, you know, have a couple of guys blow up those tight end. I mean, it almost looks like you kick a field goal out of it. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. But I'd send blitzers around the edge and up the middle, and if they hit you through the C or the D gap, I mean, what are you gonna do? Like,
I know it is all hilarious. You just can tell the defense is like, all right, let's just do something. Let's just
I mean, it'd be like if it was Madden, I'd do punt block. That would be the play I would choose. Punt block. Have one guy super deep, just in case he gets through. Everybody else just blitzes the line, see what happens, because there's not a good way to stop it. Maybe that's what those rugby players that were brought into the NFL should be there for, is to stop that play. Like, you came from rugby, you know how to beat up a scrum. Like, get in there and
You put him
tackle
on the
this guy.
shoulder. You know how they do it in rugby. You put him on the shoulder to start, and you lean it over. Well, it'll be interesting. I think they should ban the play. I think it's just not good for football, but it's good for fantasy. So if you're a Jalen Hurts owner, but boy,
Yeah, I
that
mean, I think it's just one of those two where the best way to ban it is to just say you can't push a
yeah,
player you
yeah,
can't push a guy that has the ball, and that helps for so many. There's so many situations where guys get stood up against somebody else, and then guys from each team come and barrel into each
right,
other, and it's like all this is going to do is get somebody hurt to gain 3 or 4 yards. Like it's
yeah,
not other than at the goal line where they get push it in for the touchdown. But even then, it's like I don't think that guy earned that touchdown. He just
right.
had a lineman show up and
Yeah, he
push
should
him
get
in.
half.
Yeah,
Yeah, you mean a
yeah.
guy who's
It's a
350
shared
pounds?
touchdown. Like you each get
Yeah,
half a touchdown. Like the
yeah,
sacks are split up. I mean, there's
exactly.
some plays where it should be split anyway, but that's a whole nother discussion. I mean, wild out there to see. I mean, guys, not just your studs that were out there having great games. Lad McConkey coming through, two
Yeah,
touchdowns, 111 yards. I didn't think he had it in him. I
he
really did.
also returns punts for them too. So they clearly think this guy is a high skill level player, and so I I think because of the inconsistency of everyone else at wide receiver on the Chargers, I do think there will be someone who comes up above the fray, and it's going to be Lad McConkey. I mean, already a good connection with Justin Herbert, and now showing him the numbers for it. And if they can continue this trend, man, this guy everyone got late in the draft. I don't dynasty or redraft. Like this guy would be a steal and could easily be a flex moving forward if he's putting up those type of numbers.
Yeah, we'll see how consistent he is. Some of those other Chargers receivers are out this game. Quentin Johnston's
Yeah.
still out, but he's looking like he's going to be more of the one. And my biggest concern with him going into the season is I just didn't think we were going to see Herbert throwing for 300 yards, and we
Yeah.
didn't for the first month and a half. And then all of a sudden, the last couple of weeks, they've decided, hey, maybe we should use this really talented quarterback that we have. We might have a better chance of winning games if we have a more
Yeah.
balanced attack. And now all of a sudden, they're airing it out, looking a lot better on offense. We'll see if their
Yeah.
defense can keep playing good. But the Chargers have as good a shot to win that AFC West as anybody outside of the Chiefs.
Yeah. I think the Chargers have a great team. Clearly, Harbaugh is a good coach. And now that he's like, okay, we've got some wins under our belt, let's open up the playbook because we do have this really talented quarterback. So we'll see how it all fleshes out with who becomes who. J.K. Dobbins clearly still a staple of this offense. So he's not going anywhere. Cedric Tillman, I saw you picked him up right beforehand. A lot of players in the fantasy picked this guy up. This guy is like, finally, Jameis Winston's our quarterback. Let's go off. He is enjoying life. I could not believe how open he was at the on that game-winning touchdown. This guy lost the entire defense, and Jameis Winston just threw a dime right to him. And I think what is so funny about these quarterbacks switching out, like Anthony Richardson not playing well, Joe Flacco plays well in these schemes. Clearly, the schemes are good in these organizations. At some point, you got to take these quarterbacks out if you want to win games. That offense completely changed. Now, Nick Chubb did come back, but I don't think he would have been that much of a difference maker with Deshaun Watson. With someone like Jameis Winston, who's willing to throw it downfield and a little bit more accurate downfield, at least this season, it makes the world's difference for all these players surrounding, Deshaun Watson, like a Cedric Tillman. He would have never been that liable. I know that Amari Cooper left, but he was not having a good season with Deshaun Watson. The moment that he's out, finally shows up.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's just right place, right time, right situation.
Right.
I mean, everything's kind of going well for him. He's a younger guy. Like, I liked him coming out of the draft, but
Right.
just been buried there in Cleveland. It was going to take Amari Cooper getting traded to really give him a chance. And now that happens at the same time as Deshaun Watson going down. I mean, we're going to get to see him with Jameis for probably at least a month. We'll see how long they go with it. At some point, Jameis isn't going to look this good. You can't count on 303 touchdowns every week. But, when you get into a shootout with a tough team, that's the kind of game script that works well for both teams. I mean, big numbers for both Baltimore,
Yeah.
Zay Flowers had a big game. You know, Mark Andrews, we said, had a big game. Lamar had a solid game. Wasn't the amazing game that we've been seeing from him, but, you know, a big game from Jameis Winston is going to raise a lot of receivers. I mean, it's like if he's throwing for 300, there's got to be some guys getting up there. And so nearly, 100 yards for Tillman, but also we saw Elijah Moore have a good game. First time we've seen that. And
Jerry Jeudy woke up from the dead.
Jeudy and Njoku back to life. So Jameis is going to help everybody in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think Deshaun was just trying not to make mistakes, and it clearly just changed the way that he had played football in Houston. So this is going to be a good – everyone who's been holding on to these Cleveland players, I think this is a good sign for you guys. You know, Devon Achane, I know everyone talked about, Tua's back. That means Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, they're going to be back. I think Devon Achane is the guy who benefits the most from all of this coming back with Tua because of how Tua can open up the playbook, and that means they're open up the lanes for Devon Achane. Devon Achane had 147 total yards and a receiving touchdown. I don't think it's crazy to say if Tua can stay healthy, those are the type of numbers Devon Achane can put up almost on a weekly basis because of how much attention Tyreek Hill gets while Tua's in there. I do think Tyreek Hill will kind of get, his numbers back up. I don't know about Jalen Waddle. He just seems like he's kind of not the player that he's not meeting expectations. We'll see how it goes with Tua staying healthy, hopefully. So, but I think Devon Achane, man, when Tua's there, he is the beneficiary for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the whole offense just looks so much better,
Right.
Everyone waiting around, hoping for things. Tua being back is definitely the best news that Miami can get. And it just shows that it's not always just the scheme. A lot of times you do think, it's just the scheme. Any quarterback could do it. Well, that wasn't the case for Miami. They didn't have a high-end backup like Flacco, like Jameis Winston. I mean, we're talking about these guys like, they're
pulling off the streets.
But these are guys that have had prolific years as starting quarterbacks in the NFL. They're not just journeyman backups. These are guys that were, Jameis was a number 1 overall pick for a reason. Like, he did look better than every other quarterback. He's still in the league. A lot of those guys drafted behind him aren't, even after he had a year with 30 picks. Joe Flacco has a Super Bowl ring, so it's like these guys are different than the guys that came in for Miami, the Skylar Thompson, the Tyler Huntley. That's just not the same level backup. And I think a lot of what you're seeing Tua do is get into different plays. He's audible. He's switching which direction this is going. He's moving the offensive line. And like you said, the safeties are playing that much further back and doubling Tyreek Hill. Like, that's what they're worried about. And I think Waddle is just kind of the victim of a situation that's just not ideal for him. Like, he's ideally a number 2 receiver in a high profile offense, but there's so many things that he does well that they're doing that Tyreek does that much better. So it's like, who do you want to run this deep post? Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle? Well, let's do it with Tyreek Hill. I mean, who do you want to take the short screen? Well, Tyreek Hill. Who do you who do you want to give this end around run to? Oh, well, Tyreek Hill. So it's a lot of it's redundant.
And you add Devon Achane in there, right? You have Devon Achane, then you're like, what about this underneath route? Let's just dump it off to him. You're right. There is no spot for Jalen Waddle right now in that offense.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of forced into that intermediate role, which he's solid at, but it's easy to not have prolific games because he needs, 6 to 10 targets a game to produce, and it's very hard to get intermediate distance touchdowns. Like, that's just not where you get you're getting short distance touchdowns as a receiver or long bombs. So just kind of a tough situation for Waddle. He'll have his games, but I think better days are ahead for him in Dynasty as he goes on in his career. But, Achane looks good, looks great, limited touches. Mostert gets 2 goal line touchdowns. So I think that does kind of cap his upside. I mean, if Mostert wasn't there, that could be just absurd, the kind of points he's putting up. But still, goes from being barely a flex play to back being an automatic starter. So it's just night and day there with Tua back. And then Denver even looking a lot better with Bo Nix. I mean, Bo Nix at the start of the year couldn't get anything going, and now he's out there slinging it like a QB1. I mean, it's Carolina, so we've said that before. We'll say it again. Carolina's the team you want to beat up on, but he goes for 284 and 4, and Baker's still out there slinging it too, 330 and 3 with no receivers. I mean, Cade Otton, welcome to the tight end one club.
Dude, it's crazy. Yeah, we talked about this. A lot of good tight end, like Cade Otton was going to get a lot of these targets, and man, we could not expect 2 touchdowns. A lot of great quarterback play out there too, so it's exciting. It's funny. We talked a lot about the studs, not a lot of bums because there's so much scoring this week. I feel like we were trying to find something, the negative part all show, and we could not find a huge group of guys that weren't performing to their level. We only had like a few people, and I think sometimes there's just gonna be bad teams, but we couldn't even fill our list out.
Yeah, it was the guys that aren't getting good quarterback play for the most part, or new with their quarterback. DJ Moore, 2 for 27. Caleb Williams looked horrible all game. Amari Cooper still getting used to it there with the Bills. Great game for the Bills. He only had 1 catch. Michael Pittman, 1 for 16. He's not fitting in there. Drake London was one of the few that's just kind of like, well, the last time he played the Bucs, he went off for 12 catches, almost 150 yards. They said, we're not letting this guy beat us, and they found out that Kyle Pitts could beat him too. So
yeah, I do think what's funny is Michael Pittman, that situation. He is a good wide receiver when anyone else plays. It is so infuriating if you're a Michael Pittman owner. How many more games does Anthony Richardson have, do you think, to perform the way he's been performing before Joe Flacco takes over the rest of the season? Or at least a few games, like an Andy Dalton. Or do you? You're right. This is the time to shine, but that guy is drowning out there.
He is, but it's just so tough. I mean, you look at it, so is Josh Allen. I mean, that's what I come back to. It's just I watched him and was like, this guy's a bust. This guy's horrible. How is he still on the field? Yeah. And now here we are 5 years later. So, I mean, I think Anthony Richardson probably shouldn't have started right away last year. Like that, number one, they should have bulked him up. They should have had him learning playbooks. I mean, there's some guys that absolutely need to sit a year, and he was one of them. And now it's a really hard time to say, okay, now he's going to sit a year. Right. He already sat a year when he was hurt, which was a hard situation too, because you're not able to do all the same things. Right. He's not just getting all the practice reps. He's out and can't do all of those things. So if Indy wants to make the playoffs, then you put Flacco in. But I don't think there's enough upside to that team. Like, I think if they had a really good defense, then go ahead and switch to Flacco. But I think you've got to just take your lumps and play with Anthony Richardson and see if he can stay healthy, see if he can work on his endurance, not get too tired to have to take plays off because he's tired. Like that's a red flag, but he's also a running quarterback. So, it's one of those weird things where it seemed like he thought that was like did the coaches tell him that that's okay? Like, hey, you get tired, just let us know. Come out. We'll take a play off.
There are 300-pound linemen that are blocking for you day and all game long, taking it to the head all game long. And none of them like, hey, take me out. I'm tired. That is just not a good sign, but I agree. There's also only one Josh Allen. So I don't know. We talked about this off the show. The accuracy was horrible for Josh Allen his rookie year, but he could make up for it. Like, Anthony Richardson's not even running the ball. He ran that 30-yard run at the end of the game, and he only had 40-something yards rushing. There's just a lot of worry about how he feels of the game, just instinctually as well. So it is tough. Like, we'll see how it works, but you're right. If you're building for the future, it's kind of hard to be like, all right, see ya, we're done. Like, what does that say? But anyway, I know I asked another random question.
Maybe more designed runs, like mixing some designed runs. Maybe you throw some really weird shit out there, put Flacco and Richardson on the field and throw a screen to Richardson, like something weird that people don't really know what's going on, and they're, don't know how to play for it. But you got to use his legs more and take advantage. Like that's that's his gift that makes him an excellent NFL player.
I
Is
agree.
he could be a
Is that
tight
person?
end, you know,
Yeah,
like
he's huge. All right, these last two players, you worried about them? Jaden Reed, Nick Chubb. Who are you more worried about? More injured?
probably Chubb, just because I just don't know if he's going to be healthy enough to be a contributor this
Yeah,
year. You
yeah,
know, I mean, I like him. I think he's got the skill. Like I love him as a player, but those knee injuries are just so tough. Like he's
yeah,
kind of been rushed back, and I think he's more of a stretch run type player. They're just not good enough for him to be a huge contributor. Although if Jameis keeps throwing it around, he could punch those in at the goal line. You know, Reed, I think we saw his ceiling hit, and we didn't see a lot of his floor, and now we're kind of starting to see it. So I
yeah.
think he's more of a boomer bust, you know, more of
Yeah.
a wide receiver 2 or 3 than the wide receiver 1 he was kind of getting hyped up to be.
Yeah. All right. Who should I pick up? There's a lot. There's a lot of people to pick up. Who are you gonna start?
Dynasty has one thing we've overlooked. The Jaguars' entire receiving core went down with injury. Christian Kirk done for the year.
Crazy.
Uh, you know, Brian Thomas out at least a couple of weeks, it looks like, with some ribs. And Gabe Davis done too. So that's going to be rough. So Parker Washington in Jacksonville, he's going to be the only guy that anyone's ever heard of. So he's going to be the top guy there. And then John Mechie in Houston, I think he's going to be the guy that steps in if Stefon Diggs is done, and it looks like he might be. It's haven't heard word yet, but they
Yeah.
said non-contact knee injury. That's
Never
always a
good.
bad sign.
Yeah. I like Malik Willis. Good for a spot starter here and there. He has good legs, great offense. I don't know how long Jordan Love will be out, but it didn't look like he already battling an injury before, and now it looks like he's hurt again. Khalif Raymond fitting really well with the Lions as Jameson Williams is out. I think he's good to spot start next week. And because it's National Tight End Day, Adam Troutman, go pick him up, stash him, see if he can do it again. We'll see. A lot of injuries to that tight end core too. So we'll.
Peyton's guy loves him.
Huge fan of that guy. And look, Bo Nix screamed at Sean Payton, who when no one does, and ever since then he's been pretty good. So maybe Sean Payton knows a thing or two, or who knows? He's still an asshole, but whatever.
All right, they're letting us clear. We're clear.
Yeah.
Let's do this again next week.
All right, let's see if we get another high scoring week. I'm hoping so.